welcome back. In this video, we're going to be covering how to integrate inline SVGs as React components in our pattern library. So we're going to have to do a bit of configuration with Storybook and Webpack to support this, but we get a ton of performance benefits as we can use these SVGs inline and use CSS properties to dynamically change the stroke color or the fill color, or to animate the properties of the icons themselves. Now, the icon pack we're going to be using is a free icon pack called Feather Icons, and we can get this pack for free from the website. So go ahead and download the full icon pack if you want, but we're going to be using 5 icons specifically for our button. And then we're going to be using a string prop called icon, which will allow us to dynamically swap out what icon we want to place in our button. So to get started with SVG support for our Storybook environment, we'll have to head over to our Storybook project and open up the directory .storybook. And then we're going to create a new file called webpack.config.js. And we will paste in a configuration, which I have copy and pasted from a GitHub issue, which was discussing how to load SVGs in a Storybook React environment. I'll leave a link to a blog post which will have this code snippet in the description of this video. So we'll add the Webpack config file, and then we'll create a new folder in our Storybook project called assets. And within that, we'll create a directory called images, and then one last one called icons. And then we'll head over to Feather Icon and download the icons we need. So if we go over to feathericons.com, I'm going to download user. And we're also going to download the X icon and the plus icon, and then 2 shopping ones, which are bag and cart. So these are downloaded to my downloads folder. We copy these over into our project and then paste them in. I've got some duplicates as I previously downloaded the icons, so I'll just remove the appended number. So now we've got these icons as SVGs in our project, and we've got our Webpack config to handle the SVGs. We can now start our Storybook instant up again. If you had it running previously, you'll need to do a restart because we've got a new Webpack config being applied, and we need Storybook to detect this and implement it. So we can run npm run Storybook. And while that's kicking off, I will open up a component, our button. And what we're going to do is we're going to import all of our assets directly into our button component. So to speed this up, I've got a code snippet, which I will paste in just below our styles. And what this will do is it will go up and import a React component as the SVGs. So it'll go up 1, 2, 3, go into assets, icons, and then grab the icons that we need. So now we have these available as React components. I could go into our styled button and write icon plus with children. And if we head over to our Storybook environment, we should now see our basic button has our icon. So does any other button components, but not the anchor button. It's not styled too great, but we can go ahead and update this to align in a second. But we won't want the icon plus to show on every button, so we'll remove that. Instead, we want to have some sort of system or some sort of functionality which will allow us to dynamically swap out what icon we're adding to our button. So to do this, we're going to add in a new prop called icon. And this is going to be a string. So icon string, I'll put it in alphabetical order. And we don't have a default value for this, but what we can do now is we can say, if there is an icon, then we will return icon bag for now. And we'll do the same for our styled link button. So as there's no icon value being passed as a prop, no icon is being shown. But if we go in and add a new story now, we can say icon button instead of basic button. And then we can set the icon to be, let's say, user. And we'll just say icon button. And we'll bring this down to just under the variants. So now when we go back in, we have this new story icon button. And when we go to it, we get the shopping cart. But again, we don't want to return the shopping, or shopping bag rather. We don't want to return the shopping bag icon, we want to return the user icon. So we're currently returning the icon bag every time we have a value for icon, but this isn't what we want. We want a dynamic system which allows us to swap out the icon being returned based on the value of the icon prop. So to do this, we're going to first create a new object called icons. And inside of this, we're going to create 5 values, bag, so that's the name of the icon, and then the React component we want to return, which would be the SVG. We'll copy this 5 times, and then swap out cart plus user, and then X. And then we'll say icon X, icon user, plus, and cart. So we're going to use this object to dynamically return the React component we want returned to our DOM. But before we do that, we need to implement the logic for swapping them out. So to do this, we're going to create a new subcomponent for our button called button icon. And it's going to receive a prop called name. And then based on that name, we're going to return the React component we need. So instead of icon bag, we'll have button icon, and the name will be equal to the icon value. So we'll pass in a name to the icon prop, and that'll be used in button icon. And then based on the name, we're going to return a different SVG icon. So to do this, I'm going to copy and paste some code I already have existing. I'm going to rework it a bit. So we'll replace icon with name. So I'll go through what this is doing. It's saying if there's no icon's name matching, so if we passed in, say, microphone instead of one of these values, then when it looks it up, it'll be undefined, and therefore we don't want to return any icon because there's none that exist. If there is a name match, then we'll continue and we'll assign the icon value in this button icon to the React component, and then we'll render it in a span. So if we passed in the name plus into our button story or user, I'll replace this with plus for now. Then what happens is plus gets passed in as icon, that gets passed down to button icon, it looks it up in our object, and if there's a match, it returns the React component. So when we go back to our component, you can see that plus is being returned. And if we go back into our code and returned a user, then you can see the user icon is being returned. So now we have a method of dynamically swapping out the SVGs. We can go ahead and style this a bit better now. So I'm going to go into my editor and go into button styles, and we'll make this an inline flex, align items center. And then what we can do is, because we've got our new button icon, we can go ahead and style this. And add some margin. And now we have it displaying a bit better. One last thing we can do before we finish up the video is we can add in some prop types for our new button icon component. So I'm going to add this just underneath, and we're saying we have a name value, which is going to be required always. And we'll move this just below our default props just to break it up and keep the associated logic with the component. And now anytime we call the button icon component, we always require a string as a prop. So we have quite a complex button component now, and while it's a small atom, it has a lot going on with it. We have props that influence the HTML element that is returned to the DOM. We have a CSS in JavaScript library, which is swapping out CSS values based on the props we pass it. And then finally, we have SVG support, which allows us to, again, dynamically swap out what icons we have inside of our button. The next video is going to cover how we can integrate more documentation around this component, because now that it's grown quite complex, it'd be great to show anybody on the team how this component works, how the props influence the different versions and variants of the final DOM element returned. And it's a great way of sort of adding on more support for documentation and sort of bringing the component to life in our pattern library.